Hi, welcome to another video. So, OpenAI has shipped another batch of Codex updates, and the main thing I want to talk about in this video is the Codex App update. This is the update with Appshots, goal mode becoming more official, remote computer use, plugin sharing, better browser annotations, and a bunch of browser use improvements. And honestly, this is one of those Codex releases where the individual features sound small if you just read them one by one, but together they show where OpenAI is taking Codex. Codex is not just becoming a better terminal coding agent, it is becoming more like a full workspace agent that can look at your apps, use browsers, continue long-running tasks, use shared plugins, and coordinate work across your actual computer. So let's get right into it. The biggest new feature is Appshots. Appshots are now available in the Codex app on macOS, and the idea is very simple. You press both command keys, and Codex gets the frontmost app window, including a screenshot and available text from that window. So, instead of taking a screenshot manually, dragging it into Codex, explaining what app you're using, describing what the problem is, and then hoping the model understands the context, you can just send the current app window directly. This is actually pretty useful. Let's say you are looking at a bug in a native app, or a design issue, or some weird UI state in a browser, or a settings screen, or even another tool where the problem is visible but annoying to explain. With Appshots, Codex can get that visual context much faster. And this fits really well with the direction Codex has been going recently. In previous updates, OpenAI added the in-app browser, computer use, Chrome extension support, and better artifact previews. All of that was about making Codex understand more than just code files. Appshots is another step in that direction. It basically says whatever is on your screen right now can become context for the agent. I like that a lot because a lot of real developer work is not cleanly stored in a text file. Sometimes the important context is in a simulator, a dashboard, a browser, a PDF, a design tool, a failing app window, or some admin panel. If Codex can capture that context quickly, then you spend less time explaining and more time actually fixing the problem. Now, obviously, you still need to be careful with privacy here. If you have sensitive customer data, passwords, internal dashboards, or private documents on screen, do not just casually send Appshots without thinking. This is the kind of feature that is powerful, exactly, because it can see what you're seeing. Now for coding work, UI debugging, and general troubleshooting, this is pretty great for sure. The second big thing in this update is goal mode. Goal mode is no longer experimental, and it is now available in the Codex app, the IDE extension, and the CLI. If you have not used it, goal mode is basically a way to give Codex a longer running objective instead of just one prompt. The idea is that Codex can keep driving toward a specific goal for hours or even days. Now that sounds kind of wild, and to be honest, I still think this is something people need to test carefully in real workflows. Because long-running agents can be amazing, but they can also waste tokens, get stuck, or keep trying to solve the wrong problem if the objective is vague. But the concept is really interesting. For example, instead of saying, fix this one bug, you could give Codex a goal like, improve the test coverage for this authentication module, or keep working through this migration until the build passes, or prepare this feature branch for review. That is very different from a normal chat. It makes Codex feel less like a one-shot assistant and more like an agent that can hold on to intent across a longer workflow. And this is also where the newer CLI updates connect to 26.519. In Codex CLI version 0.133, goals were enabled by default, got dedicated storage, and started tracking progress across active turns. Then, in version 0.132, OpenAI also fixed goal continuations so they stop when they hit usage limits or repeated blockers instead of looping and wasting more tokens. That last part is important, because if an agent is going to run for hours or days, it needs to know when to stop. It should not just keep burning through context and tokens because it is stuck. So, goal mode becoming official is not just a random toggle. OpenAI is clearly building the infrastructure around it: storage, progress tracking, better pause behavior, better usage limit behavior, and better integration across app, CLI, and IDE. This is probably one of the most important long-term Codex features, even if it is not the flashiest one today. The next major update is remote computer use. Codex can now use desktop apps after your Mac locks, including remotely through Codex Mobile. This is kind of a big deal because computer use is only useful if the agent can actually keep working. If your Mac locks and everything stops, then long-running computer use tasks become much less practical. But OpenAI is not just letting Codex use your locked computer with no guardrails. They mention safeguards like short-lived authorization, covered displays, relocking when local input happens, and a manual unlock fallback. So the idea is that Codex can keep using trusted computer use turns while your Mac is locked, but it is not supposed to become this open-ended remote control session forever. I think this is exactly the kind of feature that sounds a little scary at first, but is also genuinely useful if done right. Imagine you start a task from your phone, or you leave Codex running on your Mac while stepping away, and it still needs to click through a desktop app, inspect a UI, or continue a workflow that is not only in the terminal. That can be really useful. But again, this is also the part where permissions matter a lot. When an agent can operate your desktop, your browser, and your apps, the security model cannot be vague. You need to know what it is allowed to touch, when authorization expires, and what happens when you come back to the machine. So I like the direction, but I would personally start with low-risk workflows and slowly expand from there. Now, let's talk about plugin sharing. Plugin sharing through marketplace sources is now available for ChatGPT Business, and enterprise support is coming soon. This means teams can distribute reusable plugin bundles that include skills, app integrations, MCP servers, and lifecycle hooks. And I think this is a much bigger deal than it sounds. Because for individual users, plugins are cool. You install something, it gives Codex new abilities, and you use it locally. But for teams, random local setup does not scale. If every developer has a different set of skills, a different MCP server config, and a different plugin folder, then the whole thing becomes messy very quickly. Plugin sharing is how this starts becoming team infrastructure. A company can say, these are the approved Codex plugins for this workspace, and then everyone gets the same tools, the same workflows, the same integrations, and the same hooks. That is how Codex becomes more serious for real engineering teams. And the CLI updates around this are also important. In version 0.133, plugin discovery became easier to inspect with marketplace aware list output, installed versions, visible marketplace routes, and remote collection support. Then version 0.134 made connector tool schemas more reliable and allowed read-only MCP tools to run concurrently when they advertise that they are read-only. That sounds very technical, but the simple version is this. Shared tools are getting easier to inspect, easier to distribute, and more reliable to run. That is the boring infrastructure that makes the cool demos actually work. The next thing in 26.519 is advanced in-app browser annotations. Codex can now understand more specific visual instructions directly through browser annotations. You can tweak things like font size, colors, and spacing using annotations, and Codex gets a clearer signal for what needs to change. This is really good for front-end work, because when you are reviewing a generated UI, saying make this better is usually not enough. Even saying make it cleaner or fix the spacing can be vague. But if you can point directly at part of the UI and say, make this font smaller, or change this color, or increase this spacing, Codex has a much better chance of making the correct change. This is one of the places where Codex can become very practical for front-end iteration. Instead of going back and forth in text, you can mark up the actual page. Codex sees the rendered UI, understands the annotation, edits the code, and then you can verify it again. That is the loop we actually want from AI coding tools. Write the code, look at the result, receive visual feedback, fix the result, and repeat. Now, browser use also got better in this update. Codex can now download and extract all image assets from a page much faster. It can also extract structured data from pages more effectively and find information more quickly using a read-only JavaScript sandbox. This matters because web pages are messy. Sometimes the useful information is not just in plain text. It is in structured page data, images, DOM state, or some rendered page layout. If Codex can inspect that more effectively, then browser tasks become less fragile. The Chrome extension also creates less clutter now. Previously, browser agents can very quickly make your browser look like a disaster if they keep creating tab groups or leaving tabs everywhere. In this update, Codex will no longer create tab groups when taking over existing tabs or at the end of a task for handoff. Instead, it uses tab icons to indicate status. That is a small user experience detail, but I like it. OpenAI also says they significantly improved browser use reliability, including fixes on Windows, flaky plugin availability in non-geo-blocked regions, and other performance issues. So if you tried Codex browser use or the Chrome extension before, and it felt flaky, this update is probably worth testing again. So that is about it, and it is actually really awesome. I think you should check it out for sure. Overall, it's pretty cool. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this video, consider donating through the Super Thanks option or becoming a member by clicking the Join button. Also, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye.